Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. Today's August 12th. I already covered the anniversary I have for today, so I'm going to link to that below, and we're going to pick up where we left off with the Life Dynamics podcast with Troy Newman of Operation Rescue, What Happens When Abortions Go Wrong.
And we have heard happening is where when these abortion clinics call 911, there will be times where they will request a certain hospital, and it will not be the one that is close. It will often be the ones that's the farthest away. And
Correct.
I don't think people understand the reason for that.
Yeah, so again, I bring up the Hopeless Abortion Mill that's located in Illinois, Granite City, Illinois.
And again, I'm going to link below to Barbara Lee Davis's death. She died at Hope Clinic for Women that he calls hopeless.
Okay, they have hospitals very close to where this abortion mill is, but they transport them across the river several miles away to another hospital located in Missouri. Why would they do that? Because that's where a lot of these Ryan residency program people, these abortionists that are learning to be abortionists, paid for by Warren Buffett and other big name people, they're trying to fill up all the vacant seats of the abortionists from around the country and train them how to be abortionists. And so they have a little secret handshake club there where they cover this up and they sanitize it. And if a woman does die, then all the powers that be inside that hospital. University of New Mexico is another classic example where women could be brought from Southwest Women's Option to an emergency room right across the street. Instead, they're brought over to the University of New Mexico for them to be patched up or bagged up. It's the first time I've used that in a sentence. And the whole report sanitized. And then to add insult to injury here.
I would love to see his documentation for this.
Okay, there's still a huge stigma for women who've had an abortion, for the women who've had it that are injured or sometimes, and still the family. How would you like to be the family of a deceased young lady who died from an abortion?
Right.
I remember Laura Hope Smith up in Hyannis, Massachusetts,
And I'll link to Laura's story below as well.
was killed by Rapino Santahan. Same story. He didn't have any resuscitation equipment. He had, shoddy ability of doing medicine. And by the way, these abortionists never, or very rarely, go to school to become an abortionist. They sink to that level,
And I'll also include a link to the playlist about the things that contributed to Laura's death being shoddy anesthesia, unqualified staff, and an improperly equipped clinic. And the number of times I've looked at deaths where nobody was trained in CPR. Oh, that's another one I'll add. A woman had an asthma attack after an abortion at a Planned Parenthood. And the doctor and nurses didn't know how to perform CPR. With Kristen Gilbert's death, when the medics arrived on the scene, Leroy Carhart was performing CPR so ineptly that they didn't realize he was a doctor. They thought he was a bystander. So this clueless clueless Claude, we'll have to come up with one. These just absolutely inept, unqualified people not knowing what they're doing is something I've seen so many times.
At least you could be a podiatrist or something like that. No, you can't even take care of hangnails on your toes. You become an abortionist. And that's what Rapino Santahan did. And he killed Laura Hope Smith. Fortunately, Eileen Smith, the great Christian family, and her fiance was deployed, I think, to Afghanistan and Iraq, and she got pregnant on one of his home visits. She was so ashamed, she went and had an abortion, and she was killed. And it was very, very disturbing for Eileen, but she stood up and she took on the abortion industry. She sued him. We were able to get some very private depositions of the nurses that testified against Rapine, and he went to jail. He went to jail for a couple of years. He lost his whole medical license, whole, quote, medical practice. The majority of the families that we're in contact with are so ashamed they would rather hang their head for it never to be brought to light, never bring an action against the abortion cartel, and suffer in silence. And
Another thing, and I'll link below to a rant I did about this, the go-to defense in abortion malpractice is what has been called very crudely the slut defense. And that is to tear the woman down so that the jury will have zero sympathy for her and feel like she just deserved to die. When I was at Life Dynamics, Mark told us about a case with one young woman who had contacted them, and the abortion facility's lawyers got in touch with, I think it was either a boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend, and bought the couple's sex tapes from him, and told her that if they weren't going to be able to admit them in court, if she didn't drop her lawsuit, they would show these tapes to her father. This is the high road that these advocates for women take. The abortion facilities, the abortionists, and their lawyers, who are so sympathetic to these women, right up until they've got their cash and the fetus is gone, they turn on them pretty quickly, and it's vicious.
It takes a lot of courage and a lot of steel. Reminds me of Deborah Cardamone, who we had the pleasure of meeting.
And I will link to her daughter Marla's story below. And that was actually at McGee Women's Hospital. And in the lawsuit, the settlement, Debbie is not allowed to say that it was McGee Women's Hospital, but I'm allowed to say it. And the abortionist that killed her actually did a write-up in a medical journal about her death. Totally botched it. It's appalling.
And, you know, we have the Safe and Legal brochure, but what I don't think people understand is that she came to Mark. We had the autopsy photos of Marla, and she came to Mark, and she said, I want you to do something with them. I want you to help women not make the same choice so they can be safe from this. And, you know, we created the Safe and Legal brochure. It's hard to look at, and I'm sure as a mom, these photos being out there of your child like this, it's hard. But she came and did an interview, very emotional interview, which we can provide the link for. And she encouraged us to get these out because she knew the power that these images could have.
And unfortunately, they've got zero power because the pro-choice people, the ordinary rank and file pro-choice people don't want to know, and the pro-abortion people want to make sure they don't find out. So they do a very good job of see no evil, and their mantra is, all surgery has risks, all surgery has risks, all surgery has risks. No, all surgery is not performed the way abortion is. It is not standard to be as slipshod and appalling as these abortion clinics are.
If it could save even one woman, then it would be worth it. So.
Yes. Yeah, and to remind people, Marla was killed in a, quote, safe and legal abortion. And in her autopsy, they took pictures, and we can rarely get pictures. We get the autopsy report. We can rarely get pictures, but Deborah, her mom, was able to get those pictures and delivered them to Life Dynamics and Mark and worked with them to produce that brochure. And I've seen it all. I think I've seen it all. I've held babies that we've dug out of trash cans. I've seen the autopsy photos, but seeing a woman that was beautiful and vibrant and, you know, amazing in all respects on one side of the brochure, and seeing her cold, colorless, lifeless, marred body on a cold stainless steel table in the next photo, it'll shock you into reality. And
the other thing about Marla's death, this was an unwanted abortion. You know, the abortion lobby, choice. That abortion was the choice of a hospital social worker. I talked to Marla's mother. Marla did not want this abortion. As Debbie put it, the last 2 weeks of her life, all she did was cry. That was the 2 weeks that social worker spent badgering Marla into this abortion. Marla wanted to have the baby, but Marla already had a son that was a toddler, and her father had been a gymnast and was left quadriplegic in a gymnastics accident. And Marla was helping her mother to take care of him. And this social worker used that as leverage, that she falsely told Marla that her baby would be born disabled because of medications Marla had been taking, and that the baby would be so severely disabled that nobody would adopt the child. And if Marla kept the child, she would be unable to take care of her son and help to take care of her father. And the autopsy showed the baby had been perfectly healthy. The ultrasound that Marla had requested, that the social worker did not share with her, showed that the baby had been perfectly healthy. So this whole idea that the pro-choice machine, the abortion clinics, the National Abortion Federation, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, the ACLU, the idea that they are pro-choice is entirely bogus. They are pro-abortion, never upset about things like what happened to Marla. I wish I could make pro-choice people understand that the pro-abortion movement is not about letting women have choices. They are not at all disturbed that a social worker spent 2 weeks badgering this young woman into an unwanted abortion, telling her that her perfectly healthy baby was so disabled she wouldn't be able to help take care of her disabled father. It's beyond appalling. And the fact that these people get presented as if they care about women and families just infuriates me.
Shameful, on the other hand, to bring up another subject, that the majority of the pro-life movement is more interested in being liked by the abortion industry than they are willing to show what abortion really does to these women and to the babies to win.
Okay, so I'm going to end that there because he's off on a different tack. I'm going to back up 15 seconds for when I pick up later. So I've got a lot of stuff to share with you. This video is a little bit longer than it usually is, but keep tuned in and we'll have more.